Good morning. We call the July 16th, 2024 Norfolk Planning Commission meeting to order. Inform the public about the Open Meetings Act located in the northwest corner of the building and ask for a roll.
Wait.
Here.
Sock.
Here.
Bryant.
Here.
Hupkey.
Here.
Franklin. Kuby. Griffith.
Here.
Mason.
Here.
Ronfelt.
Here.
Ask for approval of the full agenda.
Move to approve.
Second.
We have a motion and a second.
All commission members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
And consideration of the approval of the minutes of the July 2nd, 2024 Planning Commission meeting.
Move to approve.
I second.
Motion and a second. Please vote.
All agency members present voting in the affirmative. Motion carries.
In consideration of the approval of the final plan development of Foundry Apartments. Anyone here for this, or Val?
I think Jeff with JEO, who normally comes for this, is not able to be here today. Could you put that, please, up? Thanks. So I have the final PD up on the screen. It looks very similar to what the preliminary was, a few minor tweaks. They fixed the pool area. They had it like into the parking lot a little bit. One thing we are looking at, and they are trying to get this accomplished before it goes to City Council, is the plat of this has a 10-foot easement along this northeastern side. It's crooked in real life. So on the top line there, and they have it, the garage is at a 7-foot setback. And so they are trying to reduce that easement line from 10 to 5. They're working with utility companies. So it shows the 7 right now, but before council finally approves it, they need to know one way or the other, whether they need to change the garages and scooch them in, or they can get a vacation of half of that easement. So I just wanted to point that out. As you look at this, and then the relief that they are asking for is having more than one building on a lot, because that is code that you have one primary building per lot. With a PD, you can ask for that relief. And then also, we made sure that they put a note in there to have a 6-foot sidewalk instead of the minimum 5, because they are requesting a shorter parking stall to squeeze this all in. So it would be a 17-foot potential depth instead of 19, by using that extra 2 feet of the sidewalk as overhang for a bumper. That still leaves you the 4-foot minimum ADA. If there are any questions.
Hey Val, any concerns with emergency personnel getting in and out, do you know?
Not that I'm aware of. They still have the 24-foot pathway from the backs of the parking stalls with that overhang.
And everything with the wetland and the detention pond, all that is good to go.
Have you guys heard, have they gotten final core approval?
I haven't heard. I don't think they've gotten the final. I know they're in the process for the wetland mitigation. So they're moving it all over to that west side. And they have their, that's where their proposed detention pond is, so.
Do you know if they're gonna need to do like a bunch of dirt work in order to do that?
No, I don't believe so, because it's already just a low-lying area. They might have to do a little bit of cutout for the detention pond, but I don't think they need to do a whole lot.
Gotcha.
They're gonna have sidewalks around that wetland area too, or would those be like raised up then, a little bit?
I would think they would need to have those raised up. I believe they are. That way they're not flooded out or underwater. This was in a floodplain, wasn't it? Is this in a floodplain? Maybe not. I know it was just kind of a low area back there, so I think they're gonna have to do some buildup on that site.
It is not in the regulated floodplain, the blue. It is in the 500-year floodplain, that brown area, so they would not need a floodplain permit.
There's no other questions. I take a motion.
Make a motion for the final plan development of Foundry Apartments.
Second that motion.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
All commission members present voting in the affirmative, motion carries.
We'll open up the public hearing to consider the North State Highway 35 and Benjamin Avenue blight and substandard study. Morning.
Hi.
We're gonna have you sign in also.
Lowell Schroeder with 5 Rural Planning, and we have been working with the developer on a blight study for this project area. And you do have the blight study up here. And, you know, as typical, we reviewed both the site and physical characteristics, data, mapping, all the information that's required to answer the questions on whether it meets the blight and substandard conditions. So just in summary, the substandard factors present, 3 out of the 6, dilapidation, deterioration, and age or obsolescence. And then the other factors of blight objective criteria, also average age, and area has stable or decreasing population. Just kind of in summary, you know, based on, you know, we use Madison County assessor data, then also with some visual observations. 82% of the structures were rated as below normal on condition, and that led to that factor being met. And age or obsolescence, the average age is 58 years old, and so that's over the 40 years that's required. And then with the other factors, the lot layout, you know, the primary area of potential development, a large lot layout. It's not subdivided yet. There's, you know, access issues. And then within the planning, we have to, you know, consider access to the roads, then also conditions within the field. One thing we noted, the map on page 13, one of the conditions is that there's really not a lot of slope in certain areas of it's pretty level, and then that aids to some problems with development, with drainage, installation of water, sewer, those factors, drainage away from homes. And then the other factor, existence of conditions that endanger life or property. There is a floodplain that runs across the southern edge of the property between, which would kind of limit that access to the highway. Those accesses would have to be developed in other areas. So. Is there any questions about the information in the survey, in the study? And Kelby is here if you have any further questions as far as the project area, the blight study area.
With the study, you guys were just taking into account those houses along the highway and not the new ones on the west side?
Correct. The layout is just kind of along the highway because those other areas are more fully developed. And with the older structures down along the road, I guess if, you know, the city's going to provide water, sewer to this area, it's probably potentially to also provide services to those or increase the services to those area homes. Okay, thank you.
Good morning, Kelby Herman. I'm the potential developer of the property. I can answer any questions that you may have about the study or anything else related to the project at this point.
If it were not for TIF, this project would be undevelopable.
If not utilizing TIF, this project would be financially unfeasible to do.
I'd ask how come, I guess.
Due to infrastructure costs, development costs, challenges with land and development on that parcel, floodplain issues, drainage issues that need to be remediated throughout the project in that region.
But the development just to the west doesn't have TIF, or did not have TIF.
I'm not familiar how that was developed.
Where does the floodplain exactly go through?
It goes through the southeast corner.
Thanks, Val.
There are some drainage concerns with that particular zone A there, and some drainage studies have been done in that region that I've been working with city engineering as far as improving that area through the development of this parcel. So there's kind of a comprehensive approach to drainage and utilities that have been looked at in coordination with this potential housing development.
what would you need to do with the drainage? Or, you know, to fix the drainage, what would you need to do? Or the drainage concerns?
Would you like me to address that, or would you like?
Is that question based on a comment on the blight study, or is, when you
Well,
say,
because
when
that's a portion of
when you
of
say fix,
why
okay.
it meets the criteria
So-
for the blight, right?
so you mentioned, yeah, so one of the things that was mentioned in the study was just the flatness. So in almost any type of project, there's some grading that has to take place. Through the design of the storm sewer system, the design of the streets, the layout of the lots, there will be grading that occurs in there to develop the correct profiles for runoff from the properties. That's not uncommon on projects. In terms of the Zone A area here, back in, I think it was 2020 or 2021, we partnered with the LENRD for a study through this area. Some of that information is available on our city project website. The results of that are recommending this. Ultimately, this channel here runs down through. There is backwater up against the levee during a high water event right there at Norfolk Avenue. But this system runs all the way down on the east side, eventually reconnects into the North Fork of the Elkhorn, south of Highway 275 on the east side of the levee. But up through this area here, long-term, I would see channel improvements going all the way down to where this reconnects. But up in here, we are in a conversation with LENRD to start working on a project for channel improvements through this northern portion. We're also looking at regional retention in this portion, directly south of this development. We're looking at the potential for wetland improvements. There are existing wetlands in there. We want to retain those, improve those. Also looking at some regional retention on the east side of Highway 35 as well up in here, again, to remove some of the pressure off of the downstream portion here at Norfolk Avenue and Highway 35 during those heavy events. So there's some reasonable conversation going on in there about drainage improvements through this area from a flood perspective. We think, just in general, as we would continue to put those together, we think there would be some reasonable interest in what we're doing. Potential grant funding through NET for some of the improvements, grant funding through LENRD for some of the improvements, or at least partnering with LENRD on some of that.
Any other questions for Kelby? Thank you.
Thank you.
This is a public hearing. Good
My
morning.
name is Roger Keeney, and I live at 1108 Westbrook. And when I first voted for this on the ballot a couple years ago for this being able to condemn property, I had no idea you could do it like this. I was thinking more like the pork plant or the beef plant, the sale barn and any places around like that. If I ever would have dreamed that you could condemn farmland because of 6 trailer houses sitting alongside the road, I would have never voted for this. TIF, the way it sits right now, is the biggest gray area I have ever seen. There is no black, there is no white. You can put in there whatever you want. You can come in here and look at a trailer house somewhere else and condemn this property. It's insane. I mean, I'm all for TIF if it's in the right area, but condemning farm ground, that's just ludicrous. I don't understand how people can even come to this conclusion. They say that the dwellings are 40, 50 years old. They're trailer houses. They're cheap. If he wants to condemn this property because of that, he needs to take the trailer house into consideration also and do something with that. If he says it's in such bad shape that he needs to get rid of that, then he needs to buy that and develop that also. I mean, I just don't understand how people can, this TIF is insane. It has no teeth. It doesn't, it can't, don't make anybody do what they say they're gonna do. It's all up in limbo. You get a couple smart lawyers in there, they can do whatever they want. So that's all I gotta say. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Steve Seahigh, and I've done some investigating myself. I don't have a dog in this fight. I don't live by the area. But number one, Calby Herman, from what I've heard, what I've checked out, it's not against the law what he's doing. But you folks and the city council are trying to figure out if you want to approve TIF for this project. And when TIF is approved, it makes our taxes go up just like they have been. Also, from what I understand, he's building his own little lumber yard right outside the city limits, so he doesn't have to pay city sales tax. What kind of crap is that, guys, ladies? And I also know, I have some friends live in Wayne. He opened up a appliance store in May 2018. It closed approximately 5 years later. My question is, if he gets this TIF, is this project going to ever be finished similar to what happened at Legacy Bend, which never did get done with TIF money either? So, yeah, this bunch of bull. Thank you.
Thank you.
Morning.
Good morning.
Kathy Caney. I live right to the west, and that area was not funded with TIF. That contractor did it all on his own. I have the biggest concern about the drainage. I know it's been looked at. I don't think we can just go ahead and look at it without a straightforward plan of drainage. We don't have any water problems, but a lot of our neighbors do. So there's already a drainage issue. And it's not going to be affordable housing. when we found out about it, and we called all the city council members and started, I've met with Kelby a couple of times. He seems like he would be willing to work with us. But we kind of got shamed and said Norfolk needs affordable housing. I'm sure they do, but $375,000, $400,000 is not affordable housing. So drainage, TIF, and it's not going to be affordable.
Thank you.
I am Don Morrow and live over in the area to the west of this. And I have some concerns of the TIF. Walters has been building there for many, many years. Never received any TIF. Had to do the same thing, had to put in a retention pond. Had to put in the streets. Everything had to come out of his pocket. As we buy the homes, then we have to pay those assessments. And when you give away TIF money, I don't want to say giveaway, but there's nothing guarding it. What are we going to do to make sure all of this is done properly? That's the problem that I have with TIF in this project. And if you start getting up to $375,000, $400,000 house, this is what the builder's been doing on his own. Why do we need to TIF it? That's some of the problems I have. There's no accountability to the TIF. We've seen that over there at Legacy. It's not finished. We had to put up stop signs to try to control traffic. And with doing this, I see no real plan. Are we going to be running trucks through the area that's been developed now? Or how are we going to do this kind of a construction? I mean, you want to run trucks through the neighborhood? No, that's not how construction should be done. But I think we've got to have some real plans, something with some teeth in it, to hold some accountability to make sure before we can just say, yes, we can give this. And I think a real serious look needs to be taken before just TIFing a project. And that's the biggest concerns I have. Thank you.
Thank you.
I'd like to remind the commission and all attendees that what the agenda item that's before us today is whether or not to recommend approval of the blight study. And yes, although it is the first step in a plan development, when you're planning on using TIF, we do not have a development or a redevelopment plan in front of us today. And so the agenda item we're working on today is approval of acceptance of the blight study.
Jim McKenzie, in regards to what you said about this is just about the blight study, I guess that helps to answer my question, and that is, what is your process in determining whether this is going to be an approval of the blight study? Do you look at the reasons behind the blight study, or do you simply make sure it's checked the boxes? And if you're just making sure it checks all the boxes that are required for blight, then there isn't a piece of property in the city of Norfolk that you can't blight. You simply have to assimilate enough adjacent properties that check the boxes that you can blight it. So 100% of Norfolk can be blighted. And so the only reason that you do blight is for TIF. And so at what point in time do we look at this process, and I've had the same conversation with the city council, that we look at the underlying reasons behind the blight, and that is the TIF. And it's a frustration of mine in that we need to understand what we're developing, what are the prices of the homes in writing, and understand that if there's a community need for that, because when you TIF a project, the city gets no new revenue on those properties for 15 years under regular blight. And we still have to provide the same services to those properties that we provide to every other property in Norfolk. So the city goes without revenue for 15 years. And if the city wants to create additional parks, we want to create additional ball fields, we want to do lots of other things, we get no new revenue for 15 years. Somebody else has got to make up that revenue. We still have to pay city salaries. We still have to do all the things that we need to do for the city. And so there has to be a need behind that blight for that TIF that makes it so important to the community that the community says, yeah, we can get behind this. The rest of us are willing to pay more because we need what is in this development so much that we're willing to take on that burden. We see none of that in the process that we have before us right now. We see you've checked the right boxes, so it's blight. It's clearly understood that you can do that for any piece of property in the city. You look at all the places in the city that are blighted today. You've got new buildings in these blighted areas. I mean, so the whole process of determining blight, we need to look at the underlying reasons. And that's my frustration with this process, is that I don't have enough knowledge or understanding of all the reasons, and not only what the developer is going to put there and the prices that the homes are going to sell for, and is that important to the community, but how are you going to use the TIF? Are you going to use it to truly buy down those prices that you're going to sell the homes for? So that whole process needs to be different so that we can understand what we're doing here and why we're even looking at the blight, because the blight by itself is meaningless without understanding the reasons behind it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kelby Herman, I just wanted to clarify just a couple topics that were brought up. I understand the agenda item is the blight study, and that's phase one of this development process. So I appreciate that point that you made. We're following the process established by the city of Norfolk. In the development, throughout this process, there will be a redevelopment plan presented to the Planning Commission and the council, and that redevelopment plan will be a written contract that the developer signs, that I will sign to agree to certain requirements within that development. So in this particular development, this is geared towards workforce housing. So there will be workforce housing standards and will be workforce housing enforceable measures in that redevelopment contract that hold me or anyone else that builds in that development to certain price points for housing. So the misconception that there's no teeth behind it, that there's nothing in writing, or that the developer can do what they want if it's blighted is just false, and the TIF process isn't fully understood. So that will come throughout this process, and that will be part of a public hearing that will be able to explain what the goal of the development is for workforce housing, how we're going to control the prices, what the houses are going to be sold for, what the target markets are for those. But this meeting isn't for those details, as Martin said. And utilizing TIF reduces the lot costs so we can get the affordable housing that's necessary for our community. I understand that developers in the past have done it different ways, but those houses are $400,000, $500,000, $600,000, $700,000 houses, and that's not what our housing study says we need and Norfolk, and utilizing the tools necessary to build workforce housing is what I specialize in multiple communities, not only Norfolk, but Wayne, Fremont, Columbus, Hastings, Aurora. I just wanted to clarify a couple of those items that aren't necessarily related to the topic on the agenda today. So, thank you.
Thank you.
I know these things come through quite a bit, and we hear the terms, and just, between Kelby and Val. There was a comment earlier about these won't be affordable, and I think a sales point was mentioned. The terms workforce housing, affordable housing, low-income housing, those are terms built into state statutes relative to this kind of a conversation, and there are values and numbers around those. So when they're using those numbers, I'm just pointing out that those are terms built into state statute, and there are values around what that means within the state statutes. Certainly from a just a general person perspective, we can look at those numbers and say they have our own opinion as to whether we think they're affordable or not. But I just want to point out that the numbers that are used in any TIF project for TIF financing, depending on the funds that they're bringing to the table, are based on that state statute definition.
My name is Kay Francavilla. I wasn't planning on saying anything today. I was going to observe. But a statement caught my attention to where I felt like I need to point something out, because I hear this in other meetings I go to. And sadly, as a taxpayer, I've found that I attend a lot of meetings, such as County Commissioner's Office, City Council, school board, because I've found out as a taxpayer, if I want to know what's going on and how my money is being spent, I have to go to these meetings at 7:30 in the morning I really don't want to go to. Why am I here? Because I've discovered that when you go to the city council meeting, they'll say, oh, well, we already discussed this at the city planning meeting, and they approved it, and you weren't there. Nobody got up and said anything at the meeting. Nobody complained. Same thing with the county commissioners. You go there, they're talking about wind turbines. Well, the county planning meeting was held, and not a single person came and complained about this. And they used this as a reason for, well, you should have been at this other meeting, and you didn't complain to us, and so we just, the planning commission decided that it's okay. Therefore, we're bound by what they said. First of all, I disagree with that statement, but I've discovered that you people are way more powerful than I realized, not even being elected people. But in any event, the comment that got me to come up here was the fact that this is only to discuss blighting. It's just the very first step, and it's just the very beginning. That was the argument that we hear as taxpayers over and over again. Well, this is just the first step. We're not really going to be voting on the main issue. We have to get it started. And yet, when you get to the point where you can discuss that main issue, what do we hear? Well, we're already in phase 2. We're already moving along. It's too late now. We've already started things. The developer has already spent dollars. You can't come in now when you didn't complain at the first step. So we're kind of between a rock and a hard place as a taxpayer. At what point in time do we say, we're a little concerned about this? And in all these meetings I go to, it always starts with the blight study. They have to blight the area. I've been out at that area. I happen to be friends of the Caneys. I've been to their beautiful, beautiful house, which is right there in that area. And that whole neighborhood is full of beautiful houses that were developed without blight. Because apparently there's 4 or 5 trailers that are on property over across from them, off of Benjamin, that is, it sounds to me like the reason why they're blighting it. The rest of the area is farmland. It's beautiful farmland. It just blows me away that based on that, they can consider that blighted. And I agree with what Mr. McKenzie says. Based on the standards that the state apparently has said, well, you can blight based on this, you could blight the entire city of Norfolk. I don't think that was ever intended. And I really feel like there is a point where you have to say, yes, we're just going to approve whether it's blighted. But there's a famous Supreme Court case, and sadly, I can't tell you what it is because I learned it back in '74. But one of the Supreme Court justices said, the camel's nose is in the tent. And that's what I feel we're looking at here. Yes, you're only looking at blighting. But once you blight it, the camel's nose is in the tent. That means the rest of the camel's body is going to be right behind. Thank you.
Thank you. I would also like to remind the public that we are a recommending body. It's not set in stone. I take offense to, it's not like I disagree with much of your points, really. You people, we are human beings, we are a member of the public, and we are here on a volunteer basis. I don't necessarily like getting up at 6:30 in the morning and being here either. But I believe as part of the community, being a member of the public, that this is important work. So I don't necessarily disagree with you. We are a very individualized group of people. Like, we're all our own people. I want to remind the people that we do also the hard lifting. We get the brunt of everything that we are about. We get everyone in the public saying this, that, the other, agree or disagree. But we are here on a voluntary basis. We don't get paid, but we're here listening. So I want to remind the public that this is who we are too. We are human beings. So I don't necessarily agree or disagree with many of your guys' points, but it is what it is. I just wanted to remind the public of that. So, yes.
Thank you. I didn't know we could have slept in. My name is Don Wisniewski. I'm here representing the Norfolk Area Home Builders Association, but not only on a local level, a state level, and a national level. Had I asked the national president of the association in Washington, D.C. to be here this morning, he would have been. But I didn't think it was necessary to bring him here. And he would have said the same thing I'm going to say. This is a basic economic 101 way of building cities and putting in what we need here. Every community across the entire nation, and I go to a tremendous amount of national meetings, this is what we talk about. This is what's needed in a community, and I hope this thing goes forward. On a national level, we don't like to use the words affordable housing. We would rather use housing affordability. And any tool that can be used to create housing affordability needs to be used. Whether we like it or not, these tools are in place and they need to be used. If I was developing in this thing myself, I'd use the exact same tools and I'd reach out to every possible tool there is to create that housing affordability. $400,000 is the new $200,000 home, guys. That's just the way it is. A known fact, 40 to 42% of every house built today is regulations. So if you think about that for a second, almost half of your house is regulations. We fight that on a daily basis in Washington, D.C. on the Hill. And regulations is driving the cost of every house up every day. So when there are tools in place, you use it. This thing needs to happen. And the basic question needs to happen today is what else can we do to make these type of things happen? The reality in the Home Builders Association in Norfolk is, and I'm one of those, we have a very, very limited amount of developers in our association. Because when the age that I'm in and most of our association is, the developers came before we did. They were older than we did and they've all retired. None of us want to be developers. So when we find developers that want to come into our community, and Kelby is one of our members, we support that 100%.
we finally have some developers that like to do these type of things, and we need to support them 100%. So I'll shut up there unless there's questions. We support this entirely and use all the tools we can. Thank you.
Kathy Caney. So whether we call it affordable housing or state laws of what's affordable, you guys have kids, you've got grandkids, that are just getting in, no matter what we call it, they can't afford that kind. If we're gonna put in homes that our kids, our grandkids can afford to get into, then let's do that. But I live just west of that. It's a struggle sometimes just to pay the taxes on that house. So let's either make it affordable or, and like I said, it doesn't matter what it's called. Yeah.
Tim Ty, 2115 J. Paul Drive, Norfolk, Nebraska. I want to support the blight study this morning. If you look at this development, you know, they're talking about 550 units and the economic impact of that over time, building those units. I recognize the TIF as a 15-year project, but these units will be around for 50 plus years. And if you look at Norfolk's history of using TIF and look at the number of units that have been developed the last 10 years because of TIF, we would be nowhere near that without these tools. We're competing with every town in the state with TIF and using these blighted studies, but part of this development includes senior housing, it includes apartments, it includes single family, so it meets a wide range of housing needs, which every employer in the town is asked. They don't want to bring more jobs to town, they want to bring more employees to town. And you know, the economic impact of all this housing has been great over time. The TIF part is only 15 years, and you know, the stuff you did 10 years ago has 5 years left. So then those go on the rolls. The other thing you have to remember, nobody likes their houses going up in value so fast, but you know what causes the most of that is lack of supply. That causes house prices to go up because there's nothing for sale and there's 10 buyers that want it. That's what causes your assessed value to go up, not TIF. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Angie Stinger, and I am a part of the Growing Together initiative here in Norfolk. And I just wanted to come and talk about what we're doing and how we're bringing young people to downtown Norfolk. The housing has been built, they're working in our area. But one thing we know is when over the next 15 years, we hope they're staying here. That's our goal. And we're going to need a place for them to live. And so I love the opportunity that this could afford. And I do think this is one way that we keep working to make sure that our community grows and is open to younger families and that they have a place to move into once they get through the Growing Together scholarship program. So I just wanted to put that out there. Thank you very much.
Jim McKenzie, I just want to follow up on a comment or two. And that is in regards to the need for TIF. if we start TIFing every new development, at what point in time do we force out builders who are now building without TIF? It becomes uncompetitive for them to compete with somebody who's getting TIF. So then you get into a situation where you're going to TIF everything. How do you compete with that? I know there's a builder in town. I've walked through a couple of his homes. He's building infill homes for between $250,000 and $285,000, 3-bedroom, 2-bath on slab. Those are affordable. And if he's competing against somebody who's getting $50,000 or $75,000, I'm not even sure what the number is of TIF per property, how does he compete? That forces him out. So how do you balance that? There's a developer in Omaha, and I'm going to try and go talk to them. They're building 3-bedroom, 2-bath for $225,000. They're using TIF, but they're getting them down to $225,000. So we have to understand what the implications are of this to the other builders in town. And if we go on this path where we're TIFing apartment buildings and everything, then how does anybody build anything without TIF? Because you set that environment where that's a requirement to compete. So just wanted to add that. Thank you.
I'll need to plug in, Val. Doesn't like it. Technology. I'll flip it up to my other import. Maybe I need to come plug in over you by you. Apologies for time it took to get this pulled up. I wanted to bring this map up just to illustrate the recent housing development that we've seen in the city of Norfolk. The truth is, prior to us really starting to use tax increment financing over the past couple years, we did not see a lot of development. We were very stagnant, and that set us back pretty far as it relates to meeting the needs of housing here in Norfolk. In 2016, we had a housing study done. For a medium population projection growth, the housing study indicated we need 762 housing units. And after the use of implementing the tool of tax increment financing, which really kicked off in 2018, we were able to come very close to meeting that goal. In 2021, we did another study. That study indicated we would need 769 units to be built in Norfolk to meet medium population projection growth. As of April, which we'll get this updated, we're sitting at about 381 units. So we still have a little bit of makeup work to do to meet that medium population projection growth. This, again, is medium population projection growth. It does not indicate any kind of economic impact. If we were to recruit a large employer, we would actually need more housing units. And you can see that in this chart, and I'll try to zoom in a little bit so those in the audience can see as well. We would actually need to meet additional higher population projection growth metrics of 977, and then the boost, I believe, I don't have that housing study in front of me, indicates another influx of high amount of jobs for the community. So we really do need to stay on top of that. I think Tim Ty's comments were right on track with the lack of supply and demand that we've had here in this community and how that has driven the housing prices up. Another thing that I wanted to point out, which happened at the Community Development Agency meeting yesterday, was the McIntosh Family Redevelopment Plan. The agency fully satisfied that bond by making the final payment on June 28th. That was 36 homes that was built out in the McIntosh unit, kind of over there by Legacy Bend. That project started with an initial base value of $353,000, and the new increment on that was $5.8 million. That brings that new area to a new valuation of $6.1 million, and that bond was actually paid off in 6 years, way ahead of the 15 years that the developers typically have to use. And if I remember correctly, J. Paul McIntosh indicated that 15 years is what it would take. So I'm guessing that a lot of that has to do with the increased valuations that we are seeing as to how that paid off so quickly. But I just wanted to bring some of this forward for your consideration. What I've understood and saw in the blight study that was presented is it follows the community development law as set forth by the state of Nebraska. So.
Thank you. You know, one thing I forgot to mention when I came up was the change in interest rates over the last couple of years. These developers are looking at double the rate. So, and the risk isn't in building the house, it's doing that development, because how fast that fills up determines whether they're going to make any money at it. So TIF is necessary for these type of developments, especially in today's market. And I think the slides Candace just showed proved a point that these projects that were TIF'd in the past are now adding to your tax base. And these ones that you're TIFing now will add to your tax base. And because of cost of development, it's going to have a positive impact over time. Not immediately, but over time. So, thanks.
Anyone else like to speak? Whatever, public hearing. Seeing none, I'll close the public hearing and open it up for discussion. I appreciate the public showing up, voicing their concerns and thoughts on everything. Personally, I agree with both sides, unfortunately. TIF is one of those polarizing type of ambiguous state statutes that you discussed. There's massive benefits to it, and Val, where are we at as far as percentage-wise? What is it, 35% of our acreage?
35 is what you can max out at, and what are we, around 28, 29? Yeah, somewhere in the upper 20s, I would say.
And that, the last, I think the city just put that out, I guess the bar graph, I would call it, of where other similar sized communities are at. And we were pretty much kind of right on the lower end of the middle, if I remember right. That was just about a month or two ago.
Yeah, Randy presented that at council. I want to say low to mid.
But there's other communities that are real up near that percentage. It's certainly an investment in the future. You don't get the benefit right away, so that is looking at that investment type. I also, with housing, it's a little bit different, just in my opinion, of where TIF should come into play. I like it more for the commercial side, because you get the sales tax, you get those type of things with it. I also, I don't see it as far as like raising taxes. I don't think really that has anything to do with it, because I know what I pay in taxes already, and TIF does none of that. So I get both sides. I really do. Where we're at with redevelopment, and is this redevelopment? Not necessarily, but does it meet the state statute for TIF? Does it check those boxes? Unfortunately, yes, it does. Do I agree with it? Not necessarily. Should those, limitations be a little bit more strict? I think. But those are my thoughts, because I really agree with both sides on this particular area. Do I see it as blight and substandard? No, I guess. But that's not necessarily me to decide, because that's the blight study says it is by statute. So those are just my thoughts. If you would please share yours.
Yeah, we don't make the rules, we play with the cards we're dealt by the legislature. If the project meets the criteria to be declared blight and substandard, it meets the criteria to be blight and substandard. There's no, it's black and white. There's no gray. Either it does or it doesn't. And we make the recommendation to the council accordingly.
I mean, I want to see a project like this move forward, but I mean, considering it blight and substandard is a stretch in my book, and that's without even considering TIF. I mean, that's just this project in general. You mentioned, I mean, it checks all the boxes, sure it does, but then it's up to us to determine on a case-by-case basis, does it really? Sure, it does on paper, but when we go out and look at it, does it really? So that's what I juggle in my brain. And just like the property to the west of it, I mean, if you really want to see a project like this move forward, if someone's really gung-ho about developing it, they'll find a way to do it. Yes, I want to see the development piece of it. I want to see more housing. I want to see affordable housing. This just doesn't seem like the right way to go about it.
I guess for me, I'm more agreeing with Martin and Doug on that. I think we have a set of rules and we have to follow them. And if it checks off the boxes for that, if we want to change that, then that needs to be changed in the statute or the policy.
And I forgot to mention that.
No.
We're not the ones that
Yeah.
that you need to talk to change that. Your legislators are the ones to talk to change that.
Not that I don't agree with both sides too. I mean, I can see both sides like they said, but ultimately, I mean, we could be here all day for all the reasons behind it and the reasons why, and it, and also on the other side, I definitely think we need a workforce housing. I'm a pretty good example of that. When I came here a year ago and can't find a house for $250,000 to $400,000 at all.
I would think the biggest thing is kind of like this was pointed out. It's step one, which there is more steps to it, but we don't necessarily know those steps without step one. And so what I would just recommend to everybody is continue to show up to the meetings, continue to educate yourselves and be involved and be present to know what it is that's going on. It's not always convenient, but if it's a community you care about, continue with it. Because as of right now, we really don't know what that full project looks like. But can't look at it through a closed lens if we want to grow.
I also want to say that I agree with both sides. One thing that keeps going through my mind is we're talking about housing affordability or affordable housing, and all of us can relate to that at some point. I remember I bought my first house in 1988 for $32,000. Those days are gone. You know, sadly, I have children that have bought houses and they pay way more than I ever did when I was their age. I think that's just the way it is. I do agree with both sides, but I think when we're trying to say, you know, that a certain amount is not affordable, we have to look that things have changed. It progresses. You know, what we paid 20 years ago is a lot different than what a house goes for now, just because of the expense, you know, of materials and like regulations and different things like that. So I do know we are in a need for more housing here. I mean, I do try to keep up with that, and this is a tough one, but I appreciate everybody coming in and, you know, giving their feedback.
Make a motion to approve the North State Highway 35 and Benjamin Avenue Blight and Substandard Study.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Please vote.
Voting in the affirmative, Bryant, Hupkey, Waite, Mason, Sock, Griffith. Voting in opposition, Ronfeld. Motion carries.
Thank you all. Val, the June 2024 building permit.
Yes, for June 2024, we had 4 new single-family detached permits come in. So as of this year, we are at 44. Last year at this time, we were 26. No new duplexes, so we are still at 1 for this year and 21 for last year at this time. No new multifamily for June, so we are still at 1 with 30 units this year, 2 totaling 44 of last year. And then no new single-family attached, so we are at 4 for this year and 10 for last year. And then the building valuation is about 249 million less than last year because of still the industrial that came in last year.
Any other open topics or concerns? Seeing none, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
So move.